Alright guys, so the first animation that we're going to be making is going to be this one right here. So I'm just going to play it. So you can see that it's an Apple Watch Ultra with and it's just like the camera is orbiting around it, and we're just showing like a few different parts, and then eventually we are gonna reveal the whole thing like that. And yeah, this animation is actually pretty simple and straightforward. I think this is probably the simplest out of all the animations that we're gonna make. But the lighting part is pretty interesting because usually when you're lighting like something static, like a static render of something, you want to make sure that only one side, you have to make sure that only one side of that object or one angle of that object looks nice. But when you're making an animation, you want to make sure that all the angles of that object, like no matter what angle you look at it from, it needs to look good from all angles, right? So that's just an interesting challenge that we're gonna solve. And but yeah, so far so good. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open Blender. So just a brand new project. We're just gonna wait for it to open. I don't know why it's taking that long. Anyway, I'm gonna delete everything and press Control S just to save it. I'm gonna call it Apple Watch underscore course, like that. Save Blender file. Okay. All right. So where exactly do we get the model? It's pretty simple. So there's this website called Sketchfab. I'm pretty sure you know about it, but if you go to the internet and you search for sketchfab.com, I'm just going to go to the homepage. And here you can find a lot of different 3D models. Some are paid, some are free. But if you could just go ahead and search for like Apple Watch Ultra, or by the way, any other model that you want, like you can go for a regular Apple Watch, or you can go for any of the maybe Samsung Galaxy watches or whatever. I don't want you guys to sort of limit your sort of creativity just based on this tutorial. My job here is just to like show you guys how to do stuff. Exactly what to make is completely up to you. There's no restrictions on that. But yeah, so if you search for Apple Watch Ultra, you're gonna see a lot of different good models, really good models. So if it has this download sign right here, then that means it is going to be downloadable, right? If it has this dollar sign right here, that means it's going to be paid. And if it doesn't have anything, for example, like this, then it's not going to be downloadable at all. So what I usually like to do is I like to just click downloadable. And then if you just want to see free models, you can click licenses and make sure that standard and editorial are unchecked. So now it's only going to show you the free models. So for this tutorial, what I did was actually, it was pretty interesting. So first I downloaded this model for that animation. So it was this model because it was, it was staff picked and all that stuff. So it was supposed to be good. But then I noticed some problems with this model. For example, like if you go here, you can see that the texture is sort of like cutting, and you can see that there's a sharp line right here. Like even here as well. Now this, it might not be that visible right now, but when you're making like close-up animations, it was like super visible, right? And it wasn't looking that good. So instead what I did was I ended up going with this model right here, Apple Watch Ultra Orange. Yeah, this one right there. So this was a much better, I mean, I don't want to say better, but it was a more, even model. You can see that there's none of those artifacts, none of those lines right there. I don't know what causes that, but it is what it is. But at the same time, I wanted the band of this model, so instead of like the orange one. So what I did was I got the band from here. I got the watch face, or like the watch, main watch unit from this. So it was pretty simple. I'm just going to show you guys how to do that. So I'm just going to download both of these. So download this. And usually if there's no FBX format, what I usually like to do is I just like to do GITF, because GITF is usually pretty nice. So just download GITF. And don't do USDZ. I don't think Blender can open USDZ by default. But yeah, GITF works perfectly fine. And with this, again, GITF should be good enough. So once they're downloaded, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open them. So I'm just going to open the Apple Watch Ultra first. Select everything and copy it. Then I'm going to go to desktop. I'm going to make a new folder. Oops, my bad. Just do a new folder. I'm going to call this Apple Watch underscore course. And then create a new folder in here. I'm going to call this band. Oops, not H band. Just band. Oops, my bad. Band. And then I'm going to have to do that again because I accidentally selected that. Like I accidentally copied the other one. So I'm going to paste this inside the band folder, and then I can open the other one, the orange one, and this I can select everything, and then I can also paste this outside the band folder. Cool. So now I can see that we have two GITF files, and what we're going to be doing is that we're just going to go to Blender now, and we can go to File, Import, and then let's do GITF 2.0. And so now I'm just going to browse over to our folder right there. I'm going to import the non-band first because I just want to like see how it looks. And yeah, so it looks pretty good actually. You can even go with this band. Honestly, this band looks pretty nice. It's just that I've already made, like in the past, I've made an animation in Unreal Engine with this orange band. So I wanted to like, do something different this time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press A to select everything. I'm going to press R to rotate, X to rotate in the X axis. And I'm going to do, actually I'm going to right click this and let's go to our side view first, just so we can sort of see how it's like, see what angle is, going to be perfect, because I want it to be like completely straight. So maybe minus 35 degrees should be fine. Yeah. Also, you can type any degrees on your keyboard and it's just going to rotate it to that specific measurement. Perfect. So this is imported. What we can do now is we can go to File, Import again, and then GITF once again. And now we're going to go inside the band folder and select the file in this and import this as well. Now with that selected, I'm going to press G and X and just move it aside like that. And then I can rotate it 35 degrees as well. Negative 35. Perfect. So now what we're trying to do is we're basically trying to get the band of this and the watch face of this. Okay. And also one other thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to get the wallpaper of this because I think the wallpaper looks pretty good. So for that, that's actually pretty simple as well. So we can just go to materials and just know what name this is. So it's EDYK. Just know like the first 3-4 letters, EDYK, and then select this and then just click here. And then you can browse materials, EDYK, just type that, and then just select this like that. And it's just gonna apply the same material to this object as well. Perfect. So now what we can do is we can just get rid of this band, select it, delete it, select it, delete it, and delete everything except for the band, except for, the watch. And even this, delete that. Go to your object mode, like your viewport mode, and then you can turn on X-ray mode. And with that on, you can just select the whole watch like that and delete it. Cool. And then this part as well, delete that. And it should be, so everything that remains should be the band, right? So yeah. Now what we're going to be doing that we're just going to right click and select hierarchy of the band object, go to top view. So then we can just press G, X, and then move it in the center. Alternatively, another thing that you can do is you can just go to item, and the location you can just set the X to 0 and it's just gonna snap back to the center. Perfect. So that looks pretty good. Let's go into our material preview mode so that we can see that it looks actually pretty decent. All right, so our watch model is ready to go. Now we're just gonna move on to the next step, which is gonna be lighting this model, and then we can move on to the animation and all that stuff. So now the lighting setup is going to be a little interesting because we're not going to use the normal like 3-point lighting setup which we usually use. It's going to be a different variation of that, so I'm just going to walk you through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first, it's generally a good idea to create a camera before you start lighting. So I'm just going to go to Add, Camera, and then go inside the camera. Then we can go to View, Lock Camera to View, so that we can control the camera. And also, if you want to change the orbit point of your camera or your viewport, you can press and hold Alt on your keyboard and press the middle mouse button wherever you want to set the center of orbit to, and that's just going to change it. But yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my output settings and just change the resolution X to 1080 as well, just so I can have like a square frame. And another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my camera. I'm going to set the focal length to 100 millimeters because that's what I usually like to do. And so I'm just going to place it right there. Let's unlock the camera to view. Let's reduce the size, like just scale it down a little bit. And now we can right click anywhere here and click vertical split, so we can have like 2 viewports. And then one of these viewports I'm going to use, I usually use one of these viewports to like look at our scene. And in this one, I usually like to like turn off all my widgets and everything. And in this one, we can get out of our camera and we can actually like work on the lighting itself. Okay, so I'm going to go to rendered mode in this. And before we move on, we need to make sure that we are inside. Our render engine is set to cycles, and the device is set to GPU compute if your computer has a GPU. If not, then just set it to CPU. And I'm going to turn on denoise as well. And I'm going to turn off noise threshold because I wanted to like render past the noise threshold. And another thing that I want to do is I want to go to the environment, and the color, you can see that there's like some lighting here. I don't want any of that. I want it to be completely black, just so like I can make sure that all the lighting in the scene I'm doing myself. So yeah, I just want to do that. And now I think we can get started with the lighting. So first things first, I'm going to go to add. I'm going to add a light, and I'm going to add an area light. That's what I usually like to do. I usually like to add area lights, and because they're really nice. And I'm going to scale it down roughly the size of the watch, maybe a little bigger, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press G, X, and just move it here in the X axis, right? So I can like obviously like move it aside. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to press R, X, and 90, just so I can rotate it 90 degrees in the X axis. But I want it to be the other way around. So I'm going to press backspace twice, and then I'm going to do minus 90, so I can rotate it the other way around like that. And then I'm going to go to the top view so we can like actually control the lighting. And now we can just place this light wherever we want, just so that, you know, it looks good. And maybe rotate it a little bit, something like that. I'm going to place it maybe right there. But you can see that it's like super bright right now. So I'm going to select the light. I'm going to reduce the power to like 5. Maybe even less, maybe something like 3. I think 3 should be fine. And so when it comes to the lighting, the smaller your light sources, the harsher your shadows are going to be, and the bigger your light sources, the softer your shadows are going to be. So I'm going to set it like something like that. Like that size should be good. And another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it down in the x-axis and scale it up in the z-axis, something like that, so that I can cover more of the top and bottom. Okay, and if I reduce the power to like, let's say 2, I think that should look better. Actually, I'm going to bring it a little closer, something like that, and then I'm going to set the power to 1. And maybe move it right there. Cool. And then what I can do is I can also duplicate this, so I can press Shift D and X and just place it like on the other side as well, so we can like light the other side as well. And just place it like that. So you're seeing how we're sort of like doing indirect lighting. We're basically setting the light source to face there, and then some light is going to bounce off. Some light is going to basically come on the watch as well. Because if I just go ahead and, let's say, if I go ahead and just set it like the direction of the light source directly at it, you can see that it's going to be very like harsh and it doesn't look good at all. By indirect lighting, it sort of looks softer and just looks better, you know? So we're going to do that. And this light I'm going to place a little bit over here. Actually, I'm fine with that, I think, because the other side needs to look good as well, which I think it does. Cool. And I'm just going to go back inside the camera. And now what we can do is we can basically create sort of a rim light for the back, because the back is pretty dark. So I'm going to duplicate one of these, Shift D, move it to the back. And if you just have it on like just straight on like that, you can see that there's going to be no shadows. So when if we end up like, you know, making an animation which involves the back, it's going to look pretty bad. But if what we do is if we like rotate this a little bit like that and just angle the light, something like that, you can see that it looks a lot more, you know, a lot nicer. Or you can do it with the other side as well. Oops, my bad. G, and the other side like that. You can also reduce the strength if you want, 0.8. Okay, so that's an option as well. Also, one thing which you might be noticing is the fact that it looks pretty flat. Like there's very little contrast in the scene. So in order to add contrast, what we can do is we can go to our render settings, we can go down to color management, and then we can just make sure that your V transform is set to AGX. You can also set it to filmic, but AGX is just more contrasty and more like realistic in my opinion. But again, it just depends on your personal preference. If you think filmic looks better, you can go for that as well. And the look, I usually like to set it to like high contrast either, or very high contrast. Now in this scene, very high contrast I think is going to be a little too much, so I'm just going to go with high contrast. But usually I like to do this before I even start lighting, so I can like sort of adjust my lighting based on that, you know. And in some scenes you can even set it to medium high contrast if you want, but I think high contrast for us should be good. And also, if you want to see if anything is overexposed or not, or underexposed in Blender, what you can do is you can change the view transform to false color. And in here, you can see that everything which is sort of orange or red is overexposed. Like this part is definitely overexposed. Anything which is blue or green is sort of underexposed. So this whole part is underexposed. And anything which is gray, for example, like these parts, and these parts right here, these are perfectly exposed. So you want to make sure that there's some gray in your scene. Not like, for example, like the exposure in this scene, like for at least these areas is like perfect. So you want to make sure that most like you want to try to get as much of your scene to be perfectly exposed as you can, right? Okay, so I'm gonna place this light a little to the back like that. And also with this, you can see that we're creating that rim light as well, like at the back, because if I turn it off, you're going to see that the back was pretty dark, but now you can see that there's a rim light, which looks pretty good. And I think I can also probably just duplicate this light one more time and just place it here as well, just so we can like highlight that part of the back as well. Actually, never mind, because then the back becomes pretty overexposed. So that's the interesting thing about animation, which is that you have to make sure that your scene looks good from like all angles, which is a pretty interesting challenge. And also one thing which I usually do, and I would recommend you guys to do as well, that is to change all your light sources to basically disks. And what that's going to do is that if they appear as like reflections, they're always going to be like, you know, a little what do you call it, they're always going to be like curved, and like they're going to be like no sharp edges, which just looks nicer. And even if you look at the original Apple commercials, you're never going to see like a very sharp reflection in them. You're going to see like very soft and very, you know, rounded reflections. So that's just something that we're going for. And now we can sort of just play around with the lighting and move it around like that. Maybe something like that. Now all this is trial and error pretty much. There's no perfect lighting setup. There's you can always like, you know, try to get it closer and closer, but it's never going to look perfect. And also one thing that I'm noticing is the top and the bottom are pretty underexposed. So I'm going to duplicate this light, Shift D, Z, and then I can rotate it down like that from the top, and then I can place this light, for example, here, and then I can reduce the exposure to 0.5. I think so far we're looking pretty decent. Also in this animation, we're going to have a white background. So it is a good idea to like sort of visualize your scene with the background, with the actual background as well. So how do we add a white background? It's actually pretty simple. You go to the internet first, and then you just search for like white. And I'm just going to get like an image which is like completely white. For example, yeah, that should be good. We can just right click this, save image as, and I'm just gonna save it on desktop like that. Perfect. And then we can select our camera. We can go to we can just go to our camera settings, go to background images, and then add image, and then we can just open the image that we just downloaded. So that's just gonna add it on the back of our scene. But not right now, you can see that it's not visible. That's because we have that's because we're not inside our camera. But you want to make sure that this is on as well, like the show overlays, this is on as well. And also the opacity by default is going to be 0.5. Just make sure it's set at 1. So right now you're going to see that the moment I change the background, you can see that our image just looks a lot darker, and it just sort of like highlighted a need for, you know, like more light in our scene. So we're just going to add that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock camera to view again, so I can move around with my camera and see like different angles of the watch. These angles look pretty good. This inner part is pretty dark. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add like a fill light to sort of just make the scene look better. So I'm going to duplicate one of these lights, and I'm going to press Shift Z to move it in the X and Y axes. Just place it right here, scale it up, and then just apply it in the general direction of our scene. Maybe even scale it up a little more, and then you can just sort of adjust the power based on your needs. But I think in our case, it looks pretty good already. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the lighting. One thing that you can probably do is you can select the material and you can you can sort of modify the materials a little bit as well. So the way you do that is basically by just maybe reducing the roughness a little bit. So 0.4. It's just going to make it, it's going to be a little less accurate than, so if you're like going for like completely accurate materials or completely accurate like commercials, then you can, I wouldn't recommend you to do that, but if you're just going for something which just looks good, then feel free to change everything you want. And this ring part, this orange ring right here, I don't want it to be that shiny. I want it to be like super rough and also metallic as well. So I think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And let's see on this side. Yeah, you can see that the lighting on this side looks pretty good because you can see that there's a bright part right here, but the dark part right there as well. And then the back is obviously brighter. So if I go to the back, you can see that the reflections here are pretty like jagged and they're not very smooth at all. That's because of the mesh itself. So if you really wanna like, make it look better, what you can do is you can select the object. You can go to add modifier. First go to the modifiers menu, obviously. Go to add modifier, generate, and then subdivision surface. If you add that and you up the levels viewport to like 2, you can see that it's gonna look a lot more, smooth. And it's just going to look a lot better, but it is going to use more resources as well, so just keep that in mind. And I think so far we're looking pretty good with the lighting. I think we're pretty much done. Now what we can do is we can basically just make some tweaks if you want. Again, you can sort of feel free to like make as many tweaks or like spend as much time on this, but I think we have a pretty basic setup. The only thing that I don't like in this is the fact that the lighting at the back is pretty flat. Like it's not very, yeah, just that, I think that's the best way to describe it. It's very flat. So I'm gonna like angle the light in such a way that it looks like there's just to like create some more shadows and stuff. I'm gonna do that. Or let's do it on the other side actually, never mind. But like angle it like that. I think that's gonna be better. Cool, that looks pretty good. I think this part, it could be a little brighter, like this whole part could be a little brighter. So in order to do that, what we can do is we can just bring this light closer a little bit, just a tad bit like that. And yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. I think we're pretty decent. Another thing that you can do is you can go to your render settings, go down to exposure. If you want it to be a little brighter, you can just set the exposure to like 1.0.1, 0. I think 0.2 should be nice. Yeah, so you can do that. Actually, I'm just gonna set it to 0.1 because I think I just wanted it to be subtle. And yeah, I think we're looking pretty good. You can change the gamma as well. Like if you reduce it, it's gonna sort of increase the contrast in a way. But I usually like to not do that. I like to do all the post-processing like after I'm done rendering. So yeah, I'm just gonna do that later. And I guess we should just start with the animation now. So the animation part is surprisingly like pretty easy compared to the lighting and like the other stuff that we've done. So I'm just gonna right click right here and we can click join areas and like just click this one to dissolve that because we just need like one viewport for the animation. And so I'm just gonna go to view, unlock this and just reduce the size of it like this a little bit. Okay, and let's actually open the animation again, like the animation that we saw at the beginning, so that we can recreate it. I'm just gonna mute the audio. Okay, so it starts off with this dial, so we can just go ahead and do that. And so I'm just gonna lock it in like that. And okay, so one thing that you're noticing is that if I get too close to the object, you're gonna see that it starts to clip. And to fix that, it's actually pretty simple. Just go to your camera, go to your camera settings, clip start. Instead of 0.1 millimeters, just set it to 0.001 or 0.0001. Just keep reducing it until you want, until you get the results that you want. And also I'm going to press Control B and just select this area so that only that area gets rendered, so that it's just faster. Okay, so one thing that you might be noticing in this animation is that the watch is sort of like horizontal, like the watch is facing upwards. I'm not going to do that again because I think the watch being like a watch facing the like the y-axis, it just looks better, I think. So I'm just going to do that. So just set this as your focal point. So we want the animation to like go something like this maybe. Okay, so let's go to the starting point. So I think that should be the starting point. And then what we can do is we can go to frame number 1 in our timeline down there, and we can press, with our camera selected, make sure that your camera is selected, that's very important. Press I on your keyboard, and then just do location, rotation, and scale, and then go ahead and time something like maybe 90 frames, and then just set it to the final position that you want it to be, maybe something like that. Press I again, and location, rotation, and scale. And so now you can see that it is, if I play it, you're going to see that it looks pretty good. Now, obviously, because this is rendering like as we, animate, as it plays, that's why it's not going to look as good. So I would recommend you to like go in your viewport mode and like preview the animation there, just to look at the speed and everything. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. After this, we're looking at the action button at the other side. So I'm going to go to frame number 90. Also, make sure to select the camera in order to see the keyframes, otherwise you can't even see them. And when you're at frame 90, press your right arrow button to just go to just go one frame ahead, and then you can move your camera to the other object, the other position. So maybe starts here, right here. Let's go to rendered mode, and then press I, location, rotation, scale. Go ahead, maybe 180, and then just place right there, and add a keyframe. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. So I think we should probably increase the roughness of this a little bit, because I think the reflections are too much. So we could just increase to like 0.45. I don't want to go above that because I think this looks pretty good. And also, one thing that you might be noticing is the fact that you can sort of see the geometry in this. It's not very smooth. So in order to like make this more smooth, what you can do is you can simply just add a subdivision surface modifier to this as well. So just go to modifiers, add modifier, and subdivision surface modifier. And just increase the levels viewport to 2. Now this is going to be pretty intensive on your computer, so just don't do this if you have like a weaker computer, but you can see that the difference is pretty good. Like it's pretty significant. And okay, that looks pretty good. So after frame number 180, go to frame number 181, and let's see what our next shot is. It's right here. So this shot I'm going to actually do, yeah, we can actually do this shot if we just, rotate our camera, but I'm probably just going to do it like vertically. I think that should look good. Maybe just like go here, zoom in like that. Make sure it's in the center. Also, if you want to make sure that things are in the center, or you want composition guides in your camera, you can select the camera, go down to camera settings, go down to viewport display, and then click composition guides, and then you can just turn on these guides. So for example, center and thirds are usually good enough. So you can see that we have these lines which we can sort of use to like place things in the center, just to like give us like a visual aid. Let's add a keyframe right there. I, location, rotation, scale. And then you can see that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make every scene be of 90 frames. Okay. So this was 90, this was 91 to 180. And then this is going to be from 180 to, what's 180 plus 90? So that would be 270. But you can see that we don't have 270 here. So we're just going to click the end frame, and we're just going to increase it to something like 500, just so we can have more space, in our timeline. And then we can go to 270, and then we can just go up like that. Press I, add a keyframe, and pretty good. So I usually like to make the animations longer than I would ideally need them, just in case, just so we can like, have some margin of like maybe doing some speed ramping, if you want to do speed ramping, or if you want to like maybe speed up the clips or whatever. So, you have like margin in that. But again, it obviously is going to take more time to render. So if you don't want it to take that much time to render, then that would not be a good option for you. But yeah, anyway, so it would be 360 if my math is not wrong. But yeah, so let's go to 271 and then let's set the camera on our next angle. So it's going to be this one right here. I'm going to show you a trick, an animation trick that we usually use. And if you let's say want to have rest of the like all these shots in vertical and then just one shot in horizontal, that's actually pretty simple to do. What you can do is you can go to frame number 270. You can select your watch and shift select your band as well, and then press I to add a keyframe for that object, and then go one frame ahead. And then what you can do is you can press RX to rotate it like that. So we're rotating it minus 90 degrees, and then press I again, right? And so this is basically what this is going to do is that it's going to make sure that if I just get out of my camera to show you better, you can see that till frame number, also keep saving your project by the way, because Blender might crash because it's pretty heavy. You can see that up till frame number 270 it is vertical like that, but at frame number 271 it just becomes horizontal. And so then in this area we can like do our like whole animation of like of the watch like being horizontal, and then after that, once the animation is done, we can just snap back to the vertical position. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this keyframe, just like the second keyframe, Control C, copy it, paste it at 360, and so it's just going to stay the same like this. And then select the first keyframe, copy that, and go to frame number 361 and paste it right there. So what this is basically going to do is that it's going to rotate it till frame number 360, and then after frame number 360 it's just going to bring it back like that. And then we can go back to our camera, go back inside our camera, and then we can just continue our animation like we normally would. But it was just a quick little tip for you guys, a quick little thing that you guys can use. But the only problem with this is that the lighting might not be perfect in this, because obviously the position of your watch has been modified. So yeah, that's just something you need to keep in mind. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to parent all the lights to your object so that when you move your object, your lights go with it. But I'm just not going to do that. That's just like, the difference is not going to be as much. So yeah, I don't think it's worth it. The only thing I think which is looking bad, is this is too vibrant. It's like too bright for some reason. So I'm just going to reduce the saturation of this a little bit. Not that much. I think that should be good. So this is where we're starting. Select your camera, add a keyframe, press I, location rotation scale, go to frame number 360, move up like that, and I, and keyframe again. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Perfect. Also, if your animations are like, one thing which I forgot to mention before was, if your animation sort of like speeds up in the beginning and slows down at the end, that means it's not set to linear interpolation. So what you can do for that is you can select all your keyframes, just click down here in the timeline, press A to select everything, right click any of those keyframes, and then just set the interpolation mode to linear. That's just going to make sure that your animation speed stays constant or like linear the whole time. But the reason why I didn't have that problem was I had sort of changed the setting, sets all my animations to linear by default. So the way you can do that is by going to Edit, Preferences, then you can go to Animation, and Default Interpolation, just make sure this is set to linear. I think by default it's probably Bezier, so just set it to linear if you want it to affect all your future animations. So yeah, after this, it's just gonna snap back to the original position. So let's go to our frame 361, sorry, and let's see what else we can animate. Okay, so this is just the final shot. So we're just gonna maybe start right here. Press I. Go ahead. So after 360 would be 450. If we're increasing, what do you call it, 90 frames. And so at that we can just set this to just be from the straight view, something like that. Make sure it's in the middle, and press I and keyframe. Perfect. I think this last shot can be a little longer, maybe something like that. 480, because I think it was going pretty fast. Let's just go to my viewport mode so you can play smoothly. And also one thing I want to do after this, I want to increase this to 600. And so once we reach this point, I don't want it to just like, you know, stay there. What I wanted to do is I wanted to sort of the camera to like move back a little bit. So I'm just gonna like move back a little bit like that, add a keyframe. And so we can select this keyframe, right click it, and the interpolation mode, this time we're gonna purposely set it to Bezier because we want this to be smooth, right? So you can see that it's a little smooth, it's not that smooth. So what we can do is we can go to easing mode, and we can change the easing mode to ease in and out. That's just gonna make it like a little more smooth. Right, so let me just go to my material preview mode, and let's just play the animation once, just so we can like, you know, make sure that the timing and everything is good. Yeah, then it can sort of like fade away, and the Apple logo can like be on the screen and everything. I think we're looking pretty good. I think the animation went pretty well, and now we can probably just go ahead and render this out. So for that, I'm gonna go back to the render mode, just see how it looks. I think the contrast is a little less. We could probably use some more contrast. So we could ideally go to a very high contrast as well. And I think it still is a little less. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add more contrast in actually let me just set it to high contrast for now, and we can add more contrast in the post-processing of this shot, of this animation. So I think we're pretty good. So the last frame should be 560. Make sure to like set this correctly before you render, because it's going to render those frames only. And then what you can do is you can go to output settings, and your output directory, you can just set this to whatever you want, or wherever you want the animation to be rendered. I'm just gonna go inside here and create a new folder called anim, and just accept it. And so the final thing that we need to do before starting to render is just go into render settings and change the samples to wherever you want. I'm gonna set it to something like 1024. 1024 samples are usually good enough for these types of renders, and they like save you a lot of time as well. If you set them to something like 4000, it's just gonna like ruin your render time. Just gonna take like twice, thrice, even 4 times more time. So yeah, just once we're done with that, we can just go ahead and click render animation, and we are good to go. All right, so I'll see when this animation has completed rendering, and then we can move on to the next step, which is post-processing. All right, so the rendering has been completed, and now we can move on to the post-processing. And so for that, I just have this project created. So I'm just going to open this project, and you can see that so one of these animations, which you're going to see in the future, like of a future video, I recorded that before, so that's already in this. But what do you call it? If I just go ahead and open the animation that we just rendered, so I'm just going to do that. So you can just go to your project section right here, double click anywhere right here, and then you can just go to wherever you had that animation saved, right? So for this one, it was the Apple Watch animation. So I'm just going to go to Apple Watch, and I ended up not rendering the actual animation that we made. I'm just going to be using the frames from the previous animation that I showed you before. But the process should be the same. It was just taking a long time, so I ended up like not rendering it. But yeah, so this is the animation. So what you can do to import this is pretty simple. You can just click the first frame right here. Ignore all this. These are the videos. Just ignore them. Just click the first frame, and then what you can do, you can see that all of your frames are right here, and make sure you check image sequence. So if you check that and press open, you're going to see that it's going to come in as a video. And what you can do with that video is right click it and just click new sequence from clip. So that's just going to give you a new sequence with that animation. Perfect. But right now, one problem that you can see is that the background is black. That's because we rendered it with transparency. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have to add a background ourselves. So I just moved it up, and the way you add a background is pretty simple as well. You just right click in your project section, click new item, and then you can just do color matte and set the height and width, set the color. We want the color to be white. Click OK, and just name it whatever you want. And then we can just go ahead and drag the color matte below the animation and extend it to fit the whole duration. And now you can see that our background has been added, And yeah, our animation looks pretty good actually. Perfect. So then what you can do after this is you can just select your animation on the timeline, and you can go to Lumetri Color. If you don't have Lumetri Color, by the way, what you can do is you can just go to Window and then make sure that Lumetri Color is checked. And once you are in this, you can just do some basic correction and all that stuff. And so you can change the temperature and everything, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to change the contrast a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast quite a bit. And I think something like 40 should be good. Let me just change to 40. Perfect. And also the highlights, I'm going to increase the highlights just to make it pop a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks much better. And maybe the shadows, reduce the shadows as well a little bit. It's a tad bit, not a lot though. Yeah, I think we're looking much better. So this was the before. You can see that it's pretty flat. This is, it's like popping more, you know, it's much better. And you can go to creative. You can increase the vibrance if you want. Just a tad bit, not a lot. And I'm actually going to reduce the saturation a little bit because I think it's too saturated. So just reduce the saturation. I'm going to reduce the saturation a little bit and then increase the vibrance a little bit. So actually, no, that's way too unsaturated. Never mind. I'm just going to set the saturation back. But yeah, so those would be my edits. You can obviously go ahead and make your own edits if you want. And I would actually encourage you to sort of come up with your own different unique color grading methods and like unique color grading options. Just like do something which looks good to you. You don't necessarily have to copy what I'm doing. But yeah, once you're done, what we can do is we can go ahead and press Control M on our keyboard, and then just save it wherever you want. And then I'm just gonna save it in Apple Watch folder, call it whatever, and then make sure that your preset is set to match source high bitrate. If you can't find it in these, what you can do is you can go to more presets and then search for match source high bitrate, and then you can just select that. So once you do that, now all that's left to do is basically just to click export, and it should render it. All right, so that was it for this one, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.